Wizards of the Coast literally raid someone's house with guns. They just woke up
Yep.
and chose violence that day. I don't understand.
Hey guys, welcome back to episode 3 of Card Crunchers with Poketin King. And
Pokemon.
so this one's going to be a bit shorter than the normal episodes that we've got, but we've got a question as well, actually, to answer in this. So if you want to read it out, Mike.
Yeah, so from Blaze Pax, aka Rob, we've got a question on the last video, which was, what will be the biggest card game in the next 5 years? Do you think something mainstream like Pokemon will still be running it, or do you reckon Disney, Lorcana, or Fab could take over the top spot?
That's a really good question. I think conversations like this are probably being had quite regularly, trying to figure out what is the next big thing. I think personally, Pokemon will probably be the biggest TCG still in 5 years. I don't see Pokemon being knocked off by anything. I know from what I've seen in some of the groups at the moment, some people are talking about Lorcana having the opportunity to kind of knock Pokemon off because obviously Disney is such a large IP. I think the card game's not even actually properly out yet, so
Yeah,
obviously it's speculation. As like with anything really, I don't think anything could take Pokemon off. I think with other TCGs like Flesh and Blood, for instance, I think Flesh and Blood is probably around about the 4th biggest TCG right now, but I can't see it breaking into the top 3 probably for a very long time. Honestly, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, and Pokemon have kind of cemented their place. They've all been around now for at least 20 years, so it's a bit
yeah.
I'd say it's a bit early for any of the newer card games to kind of have an opportunity to break into that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think those top three are so well established that something, something severe would have to happen. Like, there'd have to be some insane big shift. I mean, even all the issues like Magic the Gathering have been having, it's still up there. Like, it's nothing like, I know it potentially caused some growth in Flesh and Blood, but yeah, it's not, even in those circumstances, it's not like, oh, you're gone. Like, I think it's going to be those three for a long, long time. Obviously, I guess, yeah, next 5 years, I can't see it. I can't see it changing, to be honest.
Yeah, I think they've cemented themselves, and as you said, there's a lot of stuff that's been happening with Magic the Gathering, especially with like the financial side of things with
Yeah,
Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro. I think all those things are, I enjoy sort of talking about those things because I think it's quite interesting. But Magic the Gathering is so big; it's got such a large player base, and a lot of the players and collectors of Magic as well. They obviously got in early, so they're in their 40s and 50s, and they're pretty much like they're very financially stable. So anything that happens doesn't change anything for them. They're still going to keep collecting. I know a couple of high-profile Magic the Gathering collectors have started selling their collections to move into card games like Flesh and Blood, but I think there's just so many people involved in Magic the Gathering. I can't see it. I can't see it at the moment. I would say it's second. I can't see it dropping to third purely
yeah,
based on Yu-Gi-Oh isn't massively growing. Honestly, the growth that we've seen in Yu-Gi-Oh isn't the same as other card games. So I'd say that's probably the case. And talking about Yu-Gi-Oh as well, actually, we just had the highest sale for any Yu-Gi-Oh card that happened. That was the BGS 7 Tyler the Great Warrior Make a Wish promo, which sold for over $300,000, which is
yeah.
astronomical, especially for any card game, but for Yu-Gi-Oh as well, it's massive.
Were you expecting that from that card? Like, if you had to, when we was talking about it privately before, like in the chat and things, before it, yeah, finished, what were your expectations for that card?
Um, so I think it sold for more than I honestly thought it would.
Yeah,
Again, obviously it's a pop one. There was only one copy made, and it's a BGS 7 as well. I don't think the grade really affects it too much,
no,
honestly. But I think the hype that was built around it, I think the whole package has obviously been. It's a very niche card, so I couldn't see it selling, honestly. I didn't think it would sell for as much as it did.
yeah,
But that is just goes to show really that I don't know who purchased it. I'm sure they'll probably come out quite publicly
Yeah.
with the purchase, because it isn't really something that is a private thing. I know that it did actually get bid up to over $600,000, but that was a lot of shield bids. So I think they got deleted and it got sorted out because it's such a high profile card. I
Yeah.
think that they were probably manually going through some of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a very good price for any card, considering Yu-Gi-Oh hasn't had a card close to that before. I know when we talk about Yu-Gi-Oh, we had a really good growth spurt during the pandemic, like we did with all card games, and first edition LOB went up quite a bit. I would say before that, probably some of the most expensive cards in Yu-Gi-Oh are the DDS, probably DDS, BGS 10 or PSA 10 Blue Eyes. Usually it's Blue Eyes cards or Dark Magician Girl, for instance.
Yeah.
I know Dark Magician Girl was involved in a Weiss deal, I believe.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact trade value now, but it was within like six figures, but it's
Yeah.
definitely cheaper than that card that just sold. Were you
Yeah.
aware of that Make a Wish card before it came
I
out?
I wasn't, no. I hadn't actually heard of it. I think probably because it probably was very known back then.
Yeah,
I used to collect and I used to play as well competitively for Yu-Gi-Oh, but I never really spent much time online, so I wasn't really aware of that. So seeing it, it's a really nice card because you can
yeah,
see the inspiration from Dragon Ball Z there.
yeah,
So it's good for the hobby. There's going to be more eyes on Yu-Gi-Oh now, I think. So
yeah,
that potentially could mean that other prices start to rise as well.
yeah. Potentially that will have, a news report. It would be in articles. It'd be on websites. It'd be shared online to people that don't collect Yu-Gi-Oh, which could potentially lead to a little bit of growth in Yu-Gi-Oh in general from people seeing it and then being like, oh, I used to have those cards, or I remember Yu-Gi-Oh,
Yeah,
and oh, it's still a game I can buy, collect, and then they start getting into it. So yeah, you're right. Potentially, you could see a little bit of growth from that particular sale. But yeah, it's a very niche card. I was surprised how much that went for, despite not having, if any, knowledge at all in Yu-Gi-Oh. But it is a very niche card,
yeah,
and I feel like perhaps it went so high because potentially this is the first time it's gone to market, and when it's got that sort of novelty of first time to market, people are made aware about this card that they didn't know about, and then yeah, a lot of demand goes into it when it's sort of like a first to market type of card. So, but
yeah.
still surprised by that figure is that it's a crazy amount.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that. First to market definitely has a say. This was sold by the actual tire that actually owned the card that was given it. So
Yeah,
that I think if it ever gets sold on, I probably don't think it will for a while. I think the person who purchased it probably wants to hold it for a while. But it'd be interesting to see if the person that purchased it was an existing member of the Yu-Gi-Oh community, because if they are, probably a couple of names that it probably could be that have quite high profile Yu-Gi-Oh collections, but from what I've seen, there aren't that many cards, even obviously close to that price. So
yeah.
it'd be interesting to see if it was somebody in the Yu-Gi-Oh community, or was it purely an investor or something that somebody's getting into now that just kind of buys high profile cards for a lot of card games.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. It could be someone who is in other card games. They realise it's kind of like a one of one card and wanted to just invest into it. So yeah, I think it would be interesting to see if it pops back up within the next year or
Yeah,
more. And if it does pop up within the year, does it sell higher, lower, or the same? Yeah, I
yeah,
think if it came back up within the next year, it'd probably sell for less, in my opinion. But I guess it depends on how much attention that card sale draws back into Yu-Gi-Oh and things like that.
yeah.
Um, so I wasn't aware of this event. I don't know about you, but I think before our last episode there was the Gala TCG event in France, in Paris. I'd
Oh
never
yeah,
even heard of it. Have you? Had you heard of it before?
I hadn't heard of it before, honestly. I saw a lot of people posting it up on Instagram and stuff like that. People were talking about it. They said it's the most exclusive card game
Yeah.
show in the world. So I'm not. It seems interesting from what I've seen. It seems like a lot of the high-profile collectors from around the world were attending.
Yeah.
So it definitely sounds a bit more premium than like London Card Show, for instance.
I mean, it looks premium. I don't know if you saw. I know from the UK, like Pokey Dean, Pokey Chloe, when there was
Yeah.
like a sit-down meal with champagne and stuff by the looks of it, and like big, yeah, like entertainment and things going on. So I mean, when you compare that to any other card show, it is like, oh, what the hell is this? What's going on? This is mad. But yeah, I hadn't heard of it before until I saw it just pop up on people's stories. I know it had a bit of flesh and blood presence, though, didn't it?
Yeah, so Asmodee, the distributor, was there. I know Zetro on YouTube and Instagram, he sent a photo to me actually because he was in this. I'm not massively involved in card games from he's sort of friends with Chloe and Dean and that, so he attended. It it's pretty cool to see Flesh and Blood at event because obviously a lot, card shows I've seen before and card shows I've been to, there's been very little, if any, presence of Flesh and Blood,
Yeah.
which I
It's,
kind of do understand, honestly, I
but
think.
it's a
But
shame for
when you
you,
look
right?
at, yeah, it's a shame for me. I mean, the one we went to in February,
Yeah.
I think I found two sellers selling Flesh and Blood, so I just bought it all. But it wasn't very much at all, and it wasn't
Yeah.
really anything. It wasn't anything expensive, so I think we'll probably see a bit more of Flesh and Blood at events. But the Gala TCG event looks like something that it'll be done every year. I believe NMS Paris 10 was part of running it or starting it, I guess. So I can imagine it probably was started with a lot of high profile collectors, possibly some investment groups, perhaps. You always get those kind of involved at the top level, which is starting to happen a bit more frequently now.
Yeah.
Investment funds getting involved, but it looks really interesting, and perhaps one day we'll be able to go there.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen much of it. Obviously, just saw people's stories of things, so I have no idea if Weiss Schwarz was even there at all. To be honest, I like. I don't know. Have you seen any videos pop up? I don't know if anyone's done like a video of the event because I'd be interested to see like what. Obviously, we saw. Well, from what I saw, it was stories of like entertainment and things like that that I didn't
Yeah.
actually see much about the cards and like vendors and things like that. So be interesting to see if there was even any Weiss Schwarz there because I don't think there was anyone I knew from Weiss Schwarz that was attending.
Yeah, it seemed mostly Pokemon based accounts,
Yeah,
which kind of makes sense because Pokemon is probably the biggest. When you think of, I guess, with card games, really, these card shows are very different and these events are very different because I also didn't. I saw a bit of Magic the Gathering there. I saw someone had a PSA 10 full collection of the Power 9 in Unlimited, I believe. So that was quite nice to see. But it was mostly Pokemon. I know Dubsy Collection had there was a couple of displays there in glass cabinets where people had like
yeah,
expensive cards, and I know Chibi Collectibles had one of his Art Academy Pikachu's there, I believe. So those kind of like really valuable cards for people to be able to look at and kind of appreciate, take photos and stuff. So yeah, I didn't see any Weiss myself, but I think again, Flesh and Blood was only there because of Asmodee, the distributor, but
yeah,
there wasn't any like Flesh and Blood collectors like displaying the stuff there. So it's a little bit different. They probably were, and Flesh and Blood has a very big collector and player base in Europe. Probably, I know obviously UK is in Europe, but like when you think of places like Germany and France,
yeah,
Italy, there's a core group of collectors there, and a lot of the high profile Flesh and Blood collectors are based in like mainland Europe.
yeah.
So
Potentially it was Pokemon heavy to start with, which makes sense. I think it was the first event. I don't know. Do you know if that was the case? If this was the first time it happened?
I think they had They might have had one before, but it probably was smaller in it. I
Okay.
think with Pokemon, when you look at a lot of card games, Pokemon's definitely the card game that the content creators push things more. When you look at Magic the Gathering content creators, most of them are learning to play,
Yeah.
like showing off and bits and stuff like that. But Pokemon content creators are very much about the hype, about what's new, what's current, what's trending. They're very much on the button about everything that's happening, and I can see that's clearly shown with this card game, this card show, really, because it was, as you said, they had dinners and they had champagne. Very
Yeah.
different than the service station breakfast we had before
Or
the
the hot
London
dog
card show.
stand for
Oh,
lunch.
the hot dog stand,
I
yeah,
mean, there's nothing
very
wrong with it.
different.
Don't get me wrong, but
No, but
um,
yeah, it shows the difference in the hobby, which is,
yeah,
again, it's really interesting to see.
yeah, it was. Yeah, I was very surprised just hearing and seeing about it, and I like seeing it. It just shows that there's potential for all these different kind of events, and there's people that are interested in going to these types of different events. So yeah, more things like that, better. It's just good overall. I think for all of the card games and all of the hobbies, especially since obviously like 2020. None of these events could even possibly exist during COVID and things like that. So
Yeah,
now everyone's fully out of that. It's really nice to see these events pop up. Um, I've noticed recently there's been quite a lot of criminal activity, we should say, within TCGs. Like, I don't know what the hell is going on, but like there's been, I think, 3 events pop up in the last week of some really weird things going on. So we had a man arrested in the US for stealing like $153 worth of brilliant stars. We had
yeah,
Wizards of the Coast literally raid someone's house with guns. They just woke
yeah,
up and chose violence that day. I don't understand.
yeah,
Um, I think there was something else, but I've completely forgot. I'm sure there was a third one. Oh
yeah. There was,
yes, yeah. There's that guy. Is his name Ryan or something? Something going around on Instagram that this guy stole some cards at an event. I haven't looked into that one too much, but
yeah,
again, more theft. Don't know what's going
yeah,
on at the moment.
yeah. I think when you sort of delve into it, really, I mean, card games are an asset like anything now when you have these collectibles. So the amount of people involved that kind of want to profit off this in malicious ways is starting to rise. We've always had these kind of things happening, but it does seem right now that there is more. I know, obviously, stealing, getting arrested for stealing Pokemon cards. Maybe it's something that wouldn't have happened a little while ago because people weren't so aware of the value of Pokemon cards. But it might have been a case of oh, someone stole some toys, whatever. But
Yeah,
because it's Pokemon, maybe that does change it. With the Magic the Gathering thing, and that was definitely, I had to double take that when I read that, because what had happened was a content creator had shared that he had some cards before the release. So the new Magic the Gathering set, Machine of Madness or March of Madness, there's like a Sub-Dairy set coming out later in the month for like a couple of weeks afterwards. And he had basically leaked some of these cards early, like 2 to 3 weeks early, which
quite a
obviously
bit
is
then.
not great, but it's not end
Yeah,
of the world. And Wizards of the Coast actually sent uh, I think it's Pinkerton or something like that. They're private like military sort of thing. And they turned up at his door with guns and threatened to arrest him if he didn't give up the cards. Obviously, it becomes a grey area really, because do these people know exactly what cards he wasn't supposed to have? But apparently he had to call Wizards of the Coast there and then, and they had to discuss it. Apparently they took the cards and they've like organized, apparently given him some free cards or something for his trouble. But it does seem ridiculously extreme to send armed people to somebody's house because of leaking cards 2 weeks early.
the weird thing about that is someone at Wizards of the Coast literally woke up that day and they chose to send armed people to this guy's house, rather than
Yeah.
just say, oh, let's contact the distributor, let's figure out what's going on, let's get his phone number, let's chat to him, let's send him a letter, tell him he's done something illegal and he needs to speak to us, or you know what I mean? Like, there's
Yeah.
there's many routes they could have taken, but someone specifically chose, let's go, send armed military people to his house and then get him to phone us. Like, I just don't. It's crazy that even happened. Like, why? Yeah, it just doesn't. I just don't understand it. I just don't. How can you make a business decision like that? That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it does seem that everything right now Wizards of the Coast are doing are almost like they're trying to damage their own brand. It feels like it's kind of self-sabotage right now. Everything that comes up is very extreme with what they're doing. It's definitely the last resort that you would go with that. You could contact them directly and just sort that out yourself.
Yeah, it's like, you're right. It's like they are trying to pick all the bad PR stunts that they could possibly pull, and it just doesn't. Like what? Like what? I know people say, oh, bad PR is good PR, but like, they're taking this to some weird next level type of thing. It's just,
Yeah.
who's making all of these decisions right now? It's crazy.
Yeah, I think with that, you're right. Somebody I know the harbor management in Wizards of the Coast changed fairly recently, like last year, I believe. And I know that there's been a lot of backlash because the CEO, I can't remember her name now, but she was interviewed at something at a dinner. It was like a Wizard of the Coast dinner, and they asked her to explain what Magic the Gathering was, and she didn't actually know. She hadn't got a clue what she was the CEO of. She just said it's a card game with like wizards and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what not necessarily started it, but that was a main key point that you'll see a lot of Magic the Gathering content creators discuss and talk about is that when they're just that kind of shows how out of touch they are.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was Magic the Gathering was a card game that was sold within LGS stores. They didn't want to be big box stores. They didn't want to be selling on like places like Amazon and stuff. And now fast forward to now, and they sell pretty much 50% of their stock direct to Amazon. So Amazon is selling everything for
Yeah.
stupidly cheap and undercutting all the stores. So it definitely does seem like they've gone with just get our name out there. Doesn't matter whatever happens. Send some people with assault rifles to somebody's house. Just do whatever you got to do. And it's like I feel like you could definitely not do that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even that. It's like that would have been a big expense for them to do. So it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're trying to what's the phrase? Set an example.
That's definitely a way to set an example. But yeah, it's an easy mistake to make. Again, there was two sets with exactly the same name,
Yeah,
but one of them
yeah,
had I can't remember something after it. It's a kind of subsidiary set inside a set. So all it is probably a distributor accidentally sent it to a store and a store didn't recheck, and that was it happens. But yeah,
and yeah, and then you're staring at the barrel of a gun, thinking, "What the hell have I done?"
yeah. I mean, can you imagine if a couple of days before release days for Pokemon sets, all of these
Mad.
whatnot content creators and YouTubers were streaming openings of these things and armed men turned up at their door and threatened to take their cards away from them and
Go
send them to
get them,
jail. Can you
boys.
imagine that? Can you imagine? It's like, no, you need to put
That
that EX back. Like you're not allowed that anymore.
you
Like,
need to phone Pokemon International right now, and you need to speak to them and get this
yeah,
sorted.
you need to talk
Otherwise,
to
we'll
them.
arrest
Yeah,
you. Yeah, that just
yeah. It sounds so bizarre, but yeah, I mean the TCG world, really, honestly, a lot of stuff. There's every day you see constant drama of people stealing and exit scams, and it does sometimes feel like a very negative space to be in. But
yeah, it can do it
yeah,
when there's value and money attached, and very high value and high money sort of attached to these items, that's it. It causes so many problems, because everyone's different and everyone reacts differently to
Yeah.
their assets going up and going down, or being stolen, or being scammed, or being faked. So yeah, it's not something that is really going to change at any point. If anything, it potentially gets worse with things becoming worth more. But that is the nature. I think that's the nature of money, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, there's been people scamming for a long time now, and yeah, that's not going to change anytime soon. Let's be honest. It's just unfortunate that we have to navigate around that, I guess.
Yeah, I think, it's always going to happen, as you said. It's even if you go back to fake Pokemon cards on the
Yeah,
playground to,
yeah,
armed men in your house, it's that there's definitely apparently an upward trend. But yeah, as you said, and it's just the way of it is, and it's not all negative, of course. You see these stories and that, but it's not as frequent, when you think about it, it's not as frequent as it possibly could be, and
yeah.
perhaps it'll become, as you said, more frequent in the future. It'll be interesting to see, and if any more armed men turn up at people's doors trying to take their cards, we'll try to talk about it on here.
Yeah, it's insane, and hopefully that is a story that doesn't return, because it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Let's be honest.
No, it's it's an extreme for sure, but yeah, that seems to be what Wizards are doing right now. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, it is what it is, but it happens.
I've that's I think most of the list of what I had today. I do have a question for you though. I will be putting you on the spot a bit. So,
Okay.
if you don't have anything off the top of your head in terms of an answer, I can answer it as well. So, I know we were planning, when we get guests on at some point, to potentially finish the episode asking them if they've got a hot take. That could be on Pokemon, Flesh and Blood, anything card related, a particular card or set. So I'm curious if you have a hot take that you can share.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Put me on the spot. Yeah, I would say. I mean, I'm quite open with a lot of the stuff I post, especially on my stories and kind of things that I disagree with. I would say at the moment, right now, and again, it's a really popular thing, so there's going to be a lot of people that agree with me, and there's going to be a lot of people that don't agree with me. But with modern Japanese Pokemon, for instance, I think anybody buying boxes, anybody partaking in it in general, like I'm talking about when the new set comes out, if you're going to buy a box, obviously we got Clayburst now, boxes are pretty much almost 200 quid a box now,
Yeah,
which is ridiculous when retail for Japanese boxes is about 5,000 to 5,500 yen. So we're looking at about £33. So that's a massive uptick there. I was pretty much mostly Japanese collector for 10 plus years, but I won't buy these boxes at above retail now, which means that I can't really collect because they are all above retail. I
yeah,
would say anybody involved in them, whether it's stores buying them to sell for £5 profit, for instance, or people that are buying these boxes at these prices, that is part of the problem. Anybody that's involved in that is feeding to it. Obviously, if no one was buying, then these boxes wouldn't be worth that much. But the only reason why is because the demand is so high, and they know that if they charge £180 a box, a store will buy it and they'll sell it, and they're not
yeah,
making much profit. I know Pokerand mentioned that they're actually losing money selling Clayburst. They make more money on the other set, and it kind of subsidizes it a little bit, but they're really not much making enough money. So for me, it kind of begs the question of why are you stocking it if you're not making any money? What do you think about it?
I guess from that sense, just the end of that sort of sentence is, I think stores want to be known as the place to go to get anything. So from his perspective in selling it, even if it's at a slight loss, it helps because it means people know they can go there to get a product that potentially other stores will choose not to stock because of the price and the fact that they can't make profit or things like that. So I understand it from like a business perspective in that sense, that sometimes you need to sell at a loss to attract people to use your store. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've never been that heavily involved in Pokemon Japanese side of things. I've opened some Japanese here and there, and it was purely because you get a little bit of early access to a set before it comes to English. That's why I've bought it before, and that's why I've opened Japanese in the past. Now, I don't buy that much Pokemon as it is at the moment anyway, so I think actually the last Pokemon Japanese set would have been Eevee Heroes for me. And
Yeah.
obviously, even at that point, it started getting very difficult to get those boxes. That was a huge, hot Japanese set at the time. I think eventually this will probably cool down, but yeah, what do you think? Is this something that you see is just temporarily inflated and it will come down, or is this going to be the new standard where everyone wants to get the newest Japanese set before it comes to English?
Yeah, it is a really hard one because I thought it would have cooled down by now, honestly. I thought
Yeah,
when we got into Scarlet Violet, I think there's so many sort of variables to talk about, and there's a lot of politics involved in this, and everyone will have their sort of own opinion of it. I think it will cool down eventually. You have to only look at sets now. I know that the first Scarlet Violet and the second set, I believe, has cooled down a little bit now. I know someone that's picking boxes up from Amazon Japan for around £50, I think,
oh okay,
which is considerably cheaper.
yeah,
So the hype does cool down a little bit on sets that don't have like these massive waifu chases. That's why Clayburst is so
yeah,
expensive, because you've got this waifu chase. A card comes out and they're like, oh, this is £800, and the hobby has changed. It very much moved into the hype era, so people want to be chasing these expensive cards to try pull them to sell, like with any card game really. So I think it will cool down eventually. I don't know a time frame, honestly, because it seems to be getting worse, honestly, especially with
yeah,
like this news set. So perhaps in 18 to 24 months, I think that the Japanese releases compared to the English releases, the window will be a lot smaller. We've already got silver borders and the Japanese layout for English cards now. I think that was on purpose. I think they've understood that the Japanese hype is ridiculous, and they're kind of trying to make the gap between English and Japanese a lot smaller. So people might go, do you know what? I'm going to go back to English, and collect that instead. So it'll be interesting to see. I think for as long as it's as ridiculous as it is now, will be staying away. And I'd love to get back into buying up the modern boxes when they come out and opening them and stuff like that. But for
yeah,
now, I personally don't want to feed into it. So I understand why people do collect it and they still do buy. If you can afford to buy £180 a box and buy multiple boxes, then absolutely, like, you can get these really high value chase cards, and the sets are still absolutely amazing themselves. So it doesn't detract from the beauty of the sets. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think if anything changes, it'll probably be the window release between English and Japanese. I think they'll make it a bit smaller
yeah.
just because of the changes we've seen recently. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, if they reduce that window, I think you're right. It probably would help a bit because people may be happier to wait for the set to come out. But yeah, I think potentially social media feeds into it a bit. You want to be posting these new cards that no one's seen. You want to be the first person to open these new Japanese cards that haven't come to English yet and show them off and things like that. Although, I guess that was around a few years ago, but no one cared as much potentially. So, yeah, I guess time will tell. We will see what happens with that set. But yeah, I think that's all we have for today. So thanks for watching.
Yep.
Also, you may be already listening on Spotify, but if you're not, if you're watching on YouTube, we do have the podcast on Spotify now. So The link will be in the description. Go give it a follow if you prefer to listen more on the go without having to watch the video. So thanks again, and we'll see you in the next podcast episode.
Bye.